Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for joining the latest in the series of the Eden Campus Industry Club sessions. I'm Ian Hill. I'm the Strategic Lead for Innovation at the Eden Campus project at the University of St Andrews. I'll start with an apology in that one of our guests today, Stuart Morrison from MEPTEC, unfortunately has been dragged away to deal with a bit of a crisis at work. He's with us, but only for about 10 or 15 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll move straight over to Stuart, who's promised to give us a teaser trailer for some of the interesting work that's going on at MEPTEC. And I promise that we'll invite Stuart back for a longer session later on in the year so that he can tell us more about this. But Stuart, over to you. And if you're happy to share your screen now and fire up your presentation, we'll go straight on to Stuart Morrison from MEPTEC in Dundee. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ian. Can everybody hear me and see the presentation? Yeah? Good, okay. Right, so for those of you who don't know us, we are MEP Technologies. We're based in Dundee, and we are your resident battery manufacturer and designer. We were previously part of other companies such as Johnson Matthey Battery Systems and Axion Technologies, and continue designing and manufacturing battery systems based in Dundee for all sorts of applications in all sorts of industries. What I'd like to share with you, unfortunately not today but in a future event, is some of the considerations for designing batteries for extreme environments. And as a sort of introduction, the presentation will cover influencing factors, considering the environment that the battery is placed into. It will also detail all the different aspects and components of battery systems. More interesting to some than others, the choices of materials that can be used for battery structures. I also then will show you some of the case studies, so some of the batteries and the applications we've put them into, and some of the environmental considerations that I will cover when I'm able to present, hopefully at the next event. The physical environment of the battery. So considerations are the mechanical strength of the casing, mechanical strength of the components within, and all their resilience to vibration and physical shock and crush, and anything else you can think of that would cause damage to something physically or mechanically. Thermal considerations, battery heating, factors that can heat a battery up, factors that can overcool a battery, and how much heat rejection is required for different types of cells, different grades of cells, and different environments or medium that we'd be rejecting the heat into. Ingress protection, so the battery enclosures need to protect the internals from water ingress or other liquids in some cases, and dust, and sometimes in certain cases the possibility of the battery being completely immersed. As you might expect with high voltage systems, some of our batteries can get up to 1200 volts. The considerations for protecting users and others from electric shock. Electromagnetic and magnetic immunity, so the battery being able to function in electromagnetically noisy environments and electrostatic discharge events. And as a catch-all, other user protections, so being able to protect the battery from other things that may be a bit more specific than being covered in one of the items above. So just in summary, which feels like a very quick summary, I've got a ton of information I'd love to share. As I said, we've originally been involved in developments for electric vehicles. The team here were part of the team, or we were most of the team involved in the development and the manufacture of the battery pack that went into the McLaren P1 hypercar, which was a 176 kilowatt hour battery pack. And of course, as you've probably seen on many Top Gear or other YouTube videos, is capable of extremely high performance propulsion. Since then, we've been involved in lots of different types of battery applications. Portable energy storage, not quite as flashy as as the Maclaren project, but equally challenging in terms of the considerations for protection. And also some full electric commercial vehicle batteries. One of note, a 54 kilowatt hour, 1.4 ton battery pack that goes into a designed from the ground up electric commercial vehicle. And we've been involved in this kind of activity for over 3 decades, so I hope that kind of speaks to the fact we've got a reasonable amount of authority to share information with you that's relevant and important regarding how batteries are designed, manufactured, and what environments they go into. Short and sweet, sorry for today, but thanks very much to everybody for the opportunity to at least show you what I'd like to talk about at our next event. And I'm happy to answer any questions either now, very quickly, or later on I can come back to people. But hopefully if you wait till the next event, that's when all your questions might be answered. Thanks again. Ian?
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Thanks so much for jumping in, even though I know you've got to dash off and deal with other crises in the office. That's really, really good of you. Thank you. So Stuart, we'll ask you back very soon to tell us more about MEP Technologies. And Scott, who's fielding questions, any questions and answers that popped up during that brief slot?
There's no questions from the audience, but I thought for those that don't know you, Stuart, when you say you make batteries, could you perhaps say what scope that covers? Like, are you assembling cells or? Okay,
yeah. Sure. So we take ready manufactured cells and turn them into full-size battery packs. And that could be anything from small handheld packs of 6-12 volts, all the way up to, like I mentioned, one of them, the 54 kilowatt hour, 1.4 ton battery pack. And the cells tend to be all, we've been involved in all types of cells. So pouch, polymer pouch, prismatic, and most of the work we do nowadays is cylindrical, 18650 and 21700 sized cells. So our involvement is choosing the right cell, choosing the right interconnection to support the amount of current or power requirement in the application, adding a battery management system. We've used off-the-shelf ones, and we also have our own battery management system that we've developed here at MEP. And of course the enclosure and the additional electronics around that to create the power source for many different applications. Hopefully that covers the end-to-end from cells to going into the application. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Right, we'll let you dash now. Thank you.
Apologies for the short one, but hopefully talk to you all next time. Cheers.
That's really
have a good day.
Thank you. Moving on, and for people who've joined the call, I will say we'll end up finishing slightly earlier today, so we'll probably finish by, I guess, by about 1:45, depending on how Terry keeps us enthralled, which is my segue to Terry Hogg. Terry's at Scottish Enterprise. He's the Can-Do Challenge Fund manager at Scottish Enterprise, which means that he's very much involved with work around skills and capabilities in Scotland for the low carbon economy. A slightly different presentation to our normal industry club events, because Terry's going to be talking a bit about the Green Jobs Call, which is being issued shortly, and that hopefully will be an opportunity for many organisations on the call to think about putting bids forward for skills in the low carbon economy. So Terry, you've got your presentation up. We'll flip over to you. So I offer you Terry Hogg from Scottish Enterprise, and please put any questions in the chat box during the session and we'll pick those up after Terry's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for the introduction. Can I just check you can hear me, because I can't see the control bar with I've got full screen on, so just to check you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Thanks. So yeah, as Ian said, I'm Terry Hogg. I'm employed by Scottish Enterprise. I'm the Can-Do Innovation Challenge Fund Manager, which is a bit of a convoluted term, but basically I'm involved in a lot of our work to, I suppose, create a bit of a focus, bit of a demand pool to our innovation support. And I've been heavily involved in our Green Jobs call, which I'm going to discuss today. So the aim today is to take you through, I suppose, just take you through the call process in terms of why we're doing it, what the Green Jobs calls focused on, but particularly the types of projects, the types of information that will be required if you're interested in applying, and importantly, just to answer any specific questions that come up. So yeah, without further ado, those of you who are aware of Scottish Enterprise in terms of the main economic development agency, our Highlands and Islands colleagues and our colleagues now in the south of Scotland operate similar business support services, and in the past and up until now, the business support, the grant support, if you will, has been pretty much always on, and whether you meet certain criteria, you can apply. So this is quite a radical shift for Scottish Enterprise in going down what we're calling a call-based, time-bound process. So it's probably worth just reflecting on the rationale for that, in that by adopting a call-based approach, it allows us to be more focused on strategic national objectives, particular opportunities that come up, and Green Jobs is the one I'm also going to discuss today. It also allows us to have a bit of focused promotion and a call to action, just to really be proactive in generating focused interest in particular calls and getting folks to act at a specific time as well, and also. And again, this is subject to there being more demand than funds, which I'm pretty confident that will be the case. It allows us to flush out projects that meet the criteria, and if there's more projects than funding, it allows us to look at where the better quality projects could be. So that idea of strategic focus, call to action, and being able to flush out and evaluate and fund the most impactful projects is the rationale for this shift in a call-based approach. And actually, it kind of mirrors the way that their colleagues in the UK government, Innovate UK, have been going for a number of years now. So the Green Jobs context, I mean, a lot of this is kind of obvious, but worth highlighting why Green Jobs, and our first call being on Green Jobs. Obviously we have the climate emergency, the net zero agenda, and Scottish governments, quite rightly, proactive, could be described as aggressive objectives and targets to decarbonise. Quite rightly, looking at where Scotland can lead the charge in decarbonising our businesses, our economy, and also where we can marry that up with the opportunity post-COVID in particular is to look at where that more proactive, that greater drive in Scotland to drive forward new products, new services, the green economy, where that can benefit Scottish businesses and economy, allow them to implement, demonstrate and grow businesses in Scotland that can then export into international markets. So it's that dual policy objective of decarbonisation and economic development, which is encapsulated within this Green Jobs call support. So the Scottish Government have allocated us £40 million over the next 5 years to run through this Green Jobs call-based process. So, not an exhaustible supply, and over 5 years, it's a sizable fund, but finite in its own right. Back to that point about looking for the best projects. An important point there is to recognise that it is over 5 years. I'm going to describe the current call, which is time bound, but there's a project duration of that's been spent over 5 years. In the first 3 years, we've profiled £27 million of that spend for these initial Green Jobs calls, and the budget for this financial year is £8 million. First call, we're targeting up to £4 million of individual grant support, and just to reiterate, this is be one of 2 calls this year, second call planned for September, but there will be an ongoing series of calls. So if this call, this particular timescale isn't for you, there will be others. Yeah, I mean, probably worth highlighting this. A green job, I had no idea what a green job meant. Kind of inkling, but there's a definition that's been developed and shared by Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands, and our South of Scotland Development Agency colleagues. And there's sort of 2 elements to that. Basically, green jobs are jobs and businesses who are developing and serving, selling, producing goods and services that directly benefit the environment, conserve natural resources, or jobs where the businesses themselves are making that transition to low carbon, so looking at how they could improve their environmental performance and impact. In terms of the types of project activities, so in terms of sort of goods and services, anything that's in the developing new products, so your typical research and development projects that are developing new products, perhaps diversification of existing products into green job markets, looking at new business models, for instance, whereas the improvement of existing businesses may be investments in improved manufacturing processes, more energy efficiency, more environmentally sensitive processes as well, and anything that's looking at growing those businesses in terms of company growth. Perhaps it's increasing production capacity, additional expansion of premises, that typical generic growth project is something that we're interested in, albeit those activities are described as probably things that Scottish Enterprise, Innovate UK, Highlands and Islands, South of Scotland Development Agency are all typical things that we have invested in the past in terms of supporting business growth, but in this instance it's looking at specifically where that project, where that growth will result in green jobs. So that's worth explaining there. So just in terms of what I'm going to go through, just the kind of general eligibility aspect. I should say this process is going to be all online. I'll talk about the dates at the end, but when you go on to the application process, there's an eligibility aspect to start with, and I've mentioned it there, but just some of the key elements there are that your project needs to be creating long-term and sustainable green jobs. That's the point of it. It maybe sounds obvious, but that clear need for funding, the additionality as we describe in economic development terms, so basically you got to demonstrate the project won't happen at all or to its full extent without that funding, and there's clear additionality from the public sector funds. There is a particular range of projects we're looking at, so the lower end is £50,000 grant support up to a maximum of £500,000 support. Sounds pretty obvious, but the majority and certainly the activity and certainly the impacts taking place in Scotland is coming from Scottish Government money after all. And with this first call, we're looking for projects to start in October and to be complete by September 24 at the latest. So really, just before I drop into some specific details on what we're looking for and allow you to consider how develop your project is, whether you have all that information, whether you could work with others to develop the detail that you need. I thought worth just touching on the fundamentals. So the eligibility and the green jobs we touched on. Those jobs could be new jobs, could be safeguarded jobs that's going to be lost, or what we're calling transition jobs, so jobs that are in a non-green activity that are transitioning towards the green activity, but the jobs part is fundamentally what it's about. We will be asking information about your business, detailed information on your employees, your turnover. We will be expecting folks to commit to fair work principles and policies. For example, on a road to transition to the fair wage, which is £9.50 per hour. So that idea of making sure that grant support is invested in businesses that are making the transition towards that fair work principle. I mentioned, you've got to demonstrate that there's a need for funding and that it's going to result in impacts in the green jobs, the climate impacts, the job impacts. And we will be really, this isn't comfortable for lots of folks, but in terms of public sector funds, we will be looking in detail about financial performance, which is to flag those, which sometimes sound obvious questions, but it's worth highlighting the sort of degree of detail that's required. On your project, basically looking for the timescales of it, the overall cost, the total number of jobs. That can be quite tricky and difficult, but you do need to do that. You do need to sit down and model those specific elements to have any chance of success in the project. And I mentioned we will be looking at what your impact on your business is. So having good projections about the impact the project will make on the growth of your business is important. The green jobs, the carbon net zero aspect is driving this. So we will be looking for you to make an estimation of carbon savings from the project. Now, recognising that can be quite difficult, certainly difficult to be really detailed, really accurate, but we will be looking for you to make an estimation of that. And actually the application process provides links into support and tools that can help with that. So dropping into just to a couple of bits of detail to consider: the project plan itself, and actually this is anybody that's applied for grant money in the past, or anybody that's actually looked at investment in their business from the management team or the board. This is basic good practice in terms of project development. So these are the types of things that you need to articulate as part of the application. So the usual SMART objectives, along with milestones to allow the project to be understood and articulated. The detail about what personnel, what skills you have in place required to deliver it, what skills, what gaps you may have, and your plans to address those gaps. Just making sure that you've got the capability and the capacity to deliver. As you would expect, looking at the commercial aspect, not teaching you how to run your business, but often, particularly in innovation, sometimes the technology is the focus, and there's less time spent on articulating, what market is this addressing, what specific customer segments, what is the value proposition, what's the competitive advantage you're going to derive from this, what are your potential routes to market, just giving confidence that commercial angle, the commercialization path is clear. Much easier if you're in an existing business and you understand that. More tricky if it's a new product, new market you're entering, but that is something that you need to be thinking through. A bit of a kind of moot point this, and again, it can be tricky, but just worth flagging that this aspect about in other Scottish businesses, what this is drilling into is what's called potential displacement. So is supporting you and your company, cannibalizing sales of another business just down the road, or in the next street, or the next town, city, or whatever, and that's quite difficult. But I think understanding where you're in new markets, where you're providing a unique service, dead easy. Where you're in markets where there are existing players in Scottish businesses, having confidence that there's a growing market there that is adding to economic development rather than cannibalising economic growth from somewhere else. That's what that question's in there for good public money custodial reasons, but that's really why that's there. So it's worth thinking that through as you consider application. More into the R&D projects here. So the technical challenge, the degree of technology development that's been undertaken, that's still to be undertaken. Sometimes it's described as technology readiness levels. So what you're trying to articulate is how far you have to go to get a product that can be sold. What's the risk in there? Just really teasing out your knowledge of that development pathway, your knowledge of the risks, and your ability to adopt and implement good risk management techniques. The other aspect that's important there with an innovation project is some sense that you understand and have undertook some analysis about the freedom to operate. So, what other players are there? Are you comfortable? Are you confident that there's freedom to take your idea forward? You're not impinging on anybody else's IP, and have you considered how you will protect and commercialise your IP that may result in this R&D project as well? So, it's pretty standard elements for any application, but I appreciate some folks maybe kind of new to the grant-based application process. Just lastly on the cost that can be included within that application. Again, real detail here. So it's if you've not got that detail, you really need to be thinking it through. The application process is such that you can start. It's all online. You can start. You can save. You can come back and forward. So don't sweat it and not having all the answers immediately, but you really need to get them before you can send your application. And these are some of the general cost headings that can be covered and the detail that's looked for. So obviously the individual staff names, roles that we talked about before, and how they play a part in the project, the degree of percentage time that they'll have on the project, and the kind of salary, and obviously that salary is capped as well. Asking, in terms of, you can assign a proportion of overheads to the project. That very much depends on the amount of time you're spending on it, whether it's 100% of the whole business, the whole time on the project, or whether it's a percentage there. Most projects can consume additional materials and consumables, so having details on that is required. Capital equipment may be required. You may be able to, you may need to buy capital equipment specific for the project, or you may be looking at leasing it. So understanding both the scale of the equipment cost and the nature of how that's been brought into the project is important. And there is scope for looking at external third-party costs. Very rarely, particularly for innovation product development or any business development project, actually, all the skills and capabilities in-house. So this is provision for you identifying, do you need additional suppliers and subcontractors? Do you need particular expertise to bring in through a consultancy basis? Is there a need for professional folks to be brought in? Mentioned IP and the legal side, could be detailed financial expertise that's brought in. And if we ever get back to a stage where we can fully travel, and part of our business development, there's support for those travel and subsistence costs. Again, those need to be detailed and itemised within your application. And all those costs are before VAT. The assumption there is you'll be claiming VAT back, so why would you pay a grant to get the money back through the tax office? But if there is, for whatever reason, the VAT is not recoverable, then that's allowable. But generally, it's net costs that are supported. And the last point's kind of obvious, but really important, that you cannot start the project and then expect to have a retrospective grant award. It's back to that additionality argument. So if you can start the project, the argument is you don't need the money. So don't start the project, or don't commit to the project before you apply for the funding. So I mentioned it's a call based, and we're looking to fund the best projects. And part of the strategy is to flush out more projects than we can fund, and fund the best ones. And these are the criteria that are going to be employed to assess and prioritise the projects. So the green jobs is obviously paramount there. Those created, safeguarded, which I've described, and those ones that's in transition, those are really important for you to think through and articulate. The low carbon aspect and the CO2 saving is something that I discuss. So you need to be thinking that through, looking at how to calculate that, and making sure that's very prominent and articulated in evidence within the application. And this is probably always been part of the economic development rationale, but maybe less so in recent years, and certainly not as explicit as it is now within Scottish Government and Scottish enterprise policy. But we are fully focused on supporting COVID recovery, but there is some good evidence that's come out of Scottish Government for particular areas being more disadvantaged than others, and perhaps there'd been an argument for greater level of support. So all things being equal, there are some areas that have been identified, and we just really recently published a business plan that's articulated within that as well. So they've got areas, I think Glasgow and Clyde, Ayrshire and the North East, so quite general areas, but those are not that other projects will be excluded, but as I say, all things being equal, there is now a location and a place-based approach to Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprises economic development agenda. So those factors will come into any prioritisation criteria. So that's basically a kind of whistle-stop tour of the green jobs. As I say, the first call is open this week on Thursday, closes 24th of June. So there is a month to get your application together. As I mentioned, it's an online portal, so you can go in, you can work on it, you can save it, you can complete it in a sort of piecemeal fashion, but you will need that level of detail. We ran an information event this week, was fully subscribed, a Q&A session. There's another one being planned for Monday. I encourage you to go on to scottishenterprise.com, register for information on the green jobs. That will keep you up to date with any developments, but also will allow you to be sent the registration details for that event. And the key thing is that, not to dissuade anybody from entering this first call, but just bear in mind that this is the first of many over that 5-year period. And I'll just touch on one last thing. So that Green Jobs call is going to continue. And I'm particularly involved in this myself. There's I suppose the higher level green jobs, quite wide, to kind of scope it out and understand, where the key opportunities are. But within that, we're already identifying some what we call national opportunities. So, for instance, one of them is on zero emissions heavy duty vehicles. So within that overarching low carbon green jobs agenda, there is work underway to really focus in and drill on some specific and more focused opportunities and develop calls. So I'm involved in this heavily myself, and it's not as significant in terms of the scale of funding, but we're looking to run a feasibility funding call this year. Total funding pot about 500,000, so not a huge amount, but it's about a little bit of a fishing exercise to flush out, similar to the Green Jobs call, flush out interesting and good quality projects, fund them over 3 to 6 months this year, with a view to securing additional and larger pots of funding to prototype and demo solutions next year and the year after. And that's in heavy duty vehicles being a bit of a loose description, but heavy duty in terms of the power energy requirements, and niche in terms of the ability of Scotland to really secure economic impact. So things like your bin lorries, for instance, is a kind of heavy duty vehicle, and buses is in there, fire engines in there, cement mixers. So that heavy duty vehicle side of things in terms of heavy power, heavy energy requirement, and significant current activity in Scotland in there. So there's the vehicles themselves, there's the support systems, may well be for instance, the charging infrastructure for those vehicles, and into the components, and that's where it probably picks up from the previous discussion with MEP. Whatever way you cut this, low carbon vehicles, certainly electrical side, and the electrical battery and the fuel cells have battery components, and battery seems to be one of the key challenge areas. So, for example, solutions that are addressing battery life, battery power requirements, the durability of batteries, the performance of them, reducing the cost would be something we're very keen on, and other components within that, such as power systems, etc. So that's something that's up and running. In addition, there'll be others that come. We're looking at decarbonising the heat calls in the future as well. So for the next 5 years, you will start to see a series of integrated calls within that low carbon area. Some of them more generic, some of them really focused. So if anybody's got interest in that specific call, over the next couple of months we're working it up and launching it, but very keen to speak to people just to help us to tweak and focus the call, but speak to folks who've got specific projects as well. So a wee chance to kind of shape that over the next month or so. So I'm going to stop there. My contact details are there if anyone wants to come back with questions over and above what we deal with just now. Yeah, I'll finish there and stop sharing my screen.
Great. Terry, that was really good. Thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. Plenty to think about and hopefully plenty to digest for the people on the call. Scott, have we had any questions coming in during that session?
We'd none come in during, so maybe if I ask a couple, we'll give people a chance to have a think. Yeah.
If anybody's got any questions about this, then please jump in the chat. But fire away, Scott.
Yeah, so just this might be a daft laddie question, but it just wasn't clear to me. So what kind of businesses are eligible? So, Scottish SMEs, multinationals, or universities eligible, that kind of thing?
No, it's a good question. I didn't articulate that, Scott. So the current eligibility requires you to be an organisation that is registered as a company at Companies House. The economic impact, the benefit needs to be in Scotland. That's the, I suppose, the qualification aspect as an organisation that's registered as a company. So a university, as far as I'm aware, wouldn't meet that criteria. I don't know fully if there might be bits of universities that are constructed that way to support commercialisation, Scott, but certainly I don't think my knowledge of universities are not constituted that way. However, they could, and we would encourage if there's ability to do this. It may be more of a, unless the project's already developed, it may be more of a development. If universities have particular capability, particular technology ideas, can we connect them as suppliers to companies who may be able to apply? So that's probably the more obvious structure, if you like. So it's not a collaborative fund. It would need to be a company applying and have a supplier relationship with another entity, which may be a university.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you.
Got a question from the audience this time. So what is the minimum time frame for call 1? So I guess that might mean minimum project duration.
That's a fantastic question, and I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that one. We've got we've got you starting by October and ending by the end of September 24. I don't think there is one, in all honesty. I mean, it just needs to be something that there's a minimum grant requirement of 50,000. So I'll double check on that one, but and come back if I'm incorrect. But I'm not aware there is a minimum time on any project. So if it was a good project, it was over 50k, and it was creating green jobs, then fill your boots. I'll double check that, Scott. I'll make a point of that because it's a question that I haven't been asked, and I'm pretty sure that is the answer. But I will take an action to double check that. And if someone can maybe, even if I'll do that in general, but as I say, if there's a specific project that folks have in mind, and encourage them just to make contact with me, and we can talk about the detail of it.
Okay, so the message I take away from that is you are available to be contacted for discussion, and yes, you mentioned there is a specific session on Monday as well. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, Scott? Anything else coming in?
I noticed on your slides you said sort of 50 to 500k. There was something about 4 million, I think, on your second or third slide that I picked up as a possible project slide. Did I misunderstand? There's project size. Did I misunderstand the meaning of that 4 million?
No, you're eagle-eyed as ever, Scott. It was a 50 to 500k range of funding on each individual project. So that's the range from the small to the high on individual projects. There's 4 million, being allocated in terms of budgeted for this particular call. So the pot, if you like, is 4 million, and each project should have a range of minimum 50k, maximum 500k.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nothing else, I think we'll just move on to some final points. The first of which is around a survey that we're intending to do of industry club members. Sneh, I don't know if you want to say anything about the survey. Oops, Sneh, I think you're muted.
Hi. Just to say that, would like to carry out a survey and to see how people are engaging with Industry Club, and what types of talks people would like to see in the future. So that will be coming to you by email very shortly.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So hope it's I've seen the preview. It's a very short survey, but it's just for us to try and improve the way that we're delivering Industry Club over the next few months. I did have a slide on the next session, but for some reason my share button isn't identifying the screen. So I'll just have to tell you that the next Industry Club session is on Wednesday, the 23rd of June, same time as usual from 1 to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We will be sending out the registration information by the usual channels, so we'll be emailing you directly if you've previously attended Industry Club sessions. We'll also, of course, be putting stuff onto social media as well. At that session, we've got one speaker secured at the moment, which is Luke Tan from a new startup called Supercritical, who are working in the hydrogen electrolyzer space. So that's going to be a really interesting presentation from an innovative new company. Second speaker as yet undecided, and I think it partly depends on whether we can loop Stuart Morrison back into the discussion, having been pulled away today. So Industry Club, 23rd of June, that's a Wednesday at the end of June. Look forward to seeing you all there. And unless I've forgotten anything else, thank you very much everybody for participating. Have a really good day. Thank you, Terry, for your presentation. And if you've got any further questions about the Green Jobs Call, do get in touch with Terry.
Yeah, please do. And thanks very much for the opportunity. And thanks, Scott. Thanks, Stuart, for organising as well.
Great. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.